It's been a couple of weeks on the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast, but delighted to say we are back. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined with a full complement of lineup today. We've got Mark O'Hare, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. And look, Miguel, we do want to get into the football. We have so much to cover here. We're going to be under time pressure from the start. But Miguel, very briefly, transfer window deadline day. I can't remember a transfer window like it. Like it just kind of, it was busy at the start and then just took off the last couple of weeks with these Premier League spending.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many figures to illustrate it. We can get into the usual about how the Premier League has outspent every single other league. But of course, that's gone to another level now because Chelsea have outspent every other league. It's a continuation of the Premier League's immense power, which all comes from this broadcasting money. And again, that almost super accelerated by a new Chelsea ownership. And I mean, I had people this week describing it to me as like the early days of the Roman Abramovich spending sped up. It doesn't necessarily put pressure on Chelsea this season because it does feel like the owners are actually taking a medium-term view, which is probably good for Graham Potter. It's probably other moves that maybe have more influence on the table itself. I thought Jorginho was an astute move. I thought United's business was actually quite clever in the circumstances. And then we've got, of course, the great, how to put it, the decisiveness maybe of Pep Guardiola in getting rid of Cancelo.
Yeah, well, I think that story alone, you could spend 10 minutes talking about it. Adrian, very briefly on Chelsea. I mean, they were busy, but were you impressed overall with their signings? Like some seriously talented young players there, but I guess
they've got some great players on board.
Average could still be up front for them is the only thing I'd say.
Yeah, like why no striker? That's a big. You can spend all that money and you still haven't fixed the most obvious hole in the starting 11. Maybe Graham Potter's not that fussed about it. At Brighton, he didn't always use a traditional number 9, did he? He often went with a false 9. But look, they're going to be very good. Once Potter gets his hands on these players and works with them, they will improve. They've got to, haven't they? And I think next season they'll be contenders. Mudrik's a very, very exciting player. Enzo Fernandez is a big risk, by the way, for the money. Just written a piece on him. Fantastic 6 months, but that's all it's been in European football. Only made his Argentina debut in September. Made his Benfica debut in August. He's a very good sort of all-round central midfielder. Excellent passer. I think he'll release Mudryk in behind quite a lot. He'll probably unlock the potential of Reece James and Ben Chilwell when they come back with those long diagonals. But they've overpaid. I think we can all see that. But look, they'll be a good team soon. At the moment, they're an average team.
Yeah, Mark, I might throw the Cancelo one to you and steal that one of Adrian's stats there. He said Cancelo had the most shots out of any Manchester City player last season in the Premier League. And because of fallout, Pep Guardiola not only has got rid of him, but I guess you could argue he's gone to their nearest Champions League rivals.
Yeah, that's a strange one. I think it took everyone off guard. I always like those kind of transfers which kind of come out of nowhere. We've seen no sort of inkling of that happening until it actually occurs. So, yeah, that took me by surprise. I said off air, at the start of the season, I opted to take Liverpool as my team to win the title at the prices because I thought City almost kind of downsizing a little bit and allowing the likes of Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus to leave could have been a mistake, really. But yeah, just very surprised. I know Rico Lewis has made a big impact and Nathan Ake's had a really good season so far. But even still, someone who's been so influential last season, he has dropped off this year without a doubt. And you can see he can be a bit of a petulant character too. And I think behind the scenes, things have been kind of building a little bit there. He's quite an abrasive character and Pep doesn't take any prisoners at the best of times. So I think after Cancelo's departure, there was also murmurings that Bernardo could be on his way for similar reasons, which would have really kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons. But yeah, strange one. We'll see how that plays out. But I think at the minute, almost all football fans believe that City possibly made the wrong decision there. But maybe Pep believes that the title's gone and it's all about Europe now and shift focus. I don't know. But yeah,
the title's not gone. It's definitely not gone.
Come on.
I don't think he'll be thinking that. Surely, no way. No, he just doesn't want someone hanging around that can't accept being a sub. I think it's as simple as that. He's like, well, if you can't accept that, then go. It's a hot-headed decision, maybe, but because it weakens the squad. But he's probably thinking about the morale behind the scenes.
Yeah, and look, he's maybe trying to salvage something and get City a kickstart and maybe getting rid of one of their best players. Just inadvertently might just do that. So before we get into the 4 games that we're going to cover, plus the EFL European and best bets. We're going to keep our double the odds podcast best bets offer going for February. So that's double the odds on any of the guys' best bets, Mark, Adrian's, or Miguel's. The guys have been in good form, and we're hoping to kick on here for the busy few months ahead with the Champions League podcast as well. So all you do, if you don't have a Matchbook account, enter the bonus code podcast and you get a double the odds up to £50 in cash as well. Full details should be in the description now. And if you are watching on the live stream, do hit that like button, or watching the live stream back, and do subscribe to the channel for free. And if you're listening to the podcast, we really appreciate you tuning in, and would appreciate a 5-star review if you are watching or listening to the content anywhere. We'll get straight into it, guys, and we're going to start with Sunday 4:30, and this is a big game at Tottenham Hotspur at home to Manchester City. And take a look at the betting that we currently have at Matchbook.com. You can back Tottenham at 4.7, City the favourites at 1.78. The draw is available at 4.3. Both teams to score yes is 1.64, no is 2.28. Spurs will be getting a 3/4 of a goal head start on the Asian handicap line, currently available at 1.97, and the goal line is 3. So, look, Adrian, I'll go throw this back to you. You mentioned the title race is far from over, and look, Arsenal do have a difficult game, which we'll get to later in the show. So, this could be a massive opportunity for City. You know, Tottenham Hotspur have been in okay-ish form the last couple of weeks, but obviously Conte's absence could be a big loss to them as well.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that Antonio Conte not being there is a blow for them. He is such a dominant figure, and I'm not saying they'll be lost without him, but I think it's a big negative for Tottenham ahead of the game. No doubt about it. Pep Guardiola, by the way, does not like this stadium. He's lost on all 4 of his visits, which is quite remarkable. Surely it can't be 5 in a row. And my thinking here is that I do fancy City to go to Tottenham and sweep them to one side. Obviously, Arsenal did it a few weeks ago with ease, and there's not much to choose between Arsenal and Manchester City, in my opinion. Obviously, they had that scare in the game at the Etihad recently, where they were 2-0 down City against the run of play. It has to be said. But what happened in that second half with those 4 goals was amazing, and also I would imagine morale sapping from a Tottenham defender's point of view. So I believe they'll come into this match with a little bit of trepidation. Obviously, they've won in the cup. They got a good clean sheet at Fulham, so they're not in terrible shape. But I do think there's a golf in class. I really do. I think that City will control the game. I think we all know that because Tottenham will sit back and look to play on the counter. And I can just imagine City's midfield of Rodri, De Bruyne, and one other, possibly Gundogan, just running rings around the Tottenham midfield, which is almost always just that 2-man axis. And I think that really hamstrings them against the better teams. And their record against the better teams this season is not good at all. Tottenham Hotspur haven't beaten any of the top 4. They've lost every single game. And in their last 5 home games, they've conceded at least twice. So there are lots of red flags for me in regards to Tottenham ahead of this game. City weren't brilliant in beating Arsenal, but I think they've got the class to go to. I was going to say White Hart Lane, go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and sweep them to one side. Same
area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just City on the nose for me. It's been trimmed in. When I first looked at this yesterday, it was 1.8 or more. It's obviously a little bit of money coming for City, and I understand why.
Yeah, and it's only gone one way, that market, for sure. Miguel, we talked a lot about City, but very briefly on Tottenham. How can a club with that amount of money being involved get the Matt Doherty situation so wrong with reaching their limit of loan signings that they end up having to terminate his contract, I think it was 18 months before it was due to end?
Well, I think one thing it does is point to what Spurs are right now. Like, I wrote a piece in this 2 weeks ago about kind of this. It's felt for a while like Spurs are basically kind of almost trying to, rather than just have a clean break and build a new team in the way, say, Ferguson did, the way Arsenal did in 2019-20. They've been kind of hanging on to the Poch era. Now, I know we're so many managers past now, but it's like the core of the team is still there with everything around it being changed. And I think it's led to both this staleness and then this situation where they're kind of this constant turnover of players around it. So we have this scenario where so many players were out on loan, and they were forced into this really drastic move on Doherty. And I think that is a factor in where Spurs are now, where kind of Conte is trying or has been trying to lift them up maybe to above their level, but there's this constant drag. I mean, I've for a long time felt they need a bit of a rethink. As for this game, though, I'm not sure. It's an interesting one in that in terms of rating, it's very rare we have a match like this where we had the other fixture so recently, and it feels like it's going to be along a similar dynamic. I know this game has had a pattern over the last few years. It did feel like City broke that in the last match, and it'll be a classic where Spurs look to sit deep and counter, but they aren't necessarily that well set up for that. City again at the other side, conceding goals. So I'm actually completely guided by the first game. I think this will be both teams to score, especially with Kane doing what he's doing at the moment. Son maybe hinting at back to a bit of form. City can be got at, especially by the Spurs, but City probably have too much. So yeah, City win with both teams to score.
Yeah, that's it. Look, if you do like that City price at around 1.78 that Adrian's touched on and add the both teams to score, you do get 3.35. Does look quite big and appealing. And incidentally, City have conceded a goal per game on average in the Premier League. So definitely the stats back that up. Mark, you're in agreement, particularly on the Manchester City side. So you feel still at 1.78 they're about here?
I do, because City were about 1.85, 1.9 when they went to Manchester United recently in the Manchester derby, which you would describe as being a tougher away day than Tottenham are right now. Liverpool were around evens, 2.05 when they went and won at Tottenham earlier this season, and we've seen how Liverpool have performed already this campaign. I think City are around 1.66 when they went away to Chelsea. So in terms of actual odds, I think there's certainly reason to believe that City is still a little bit too big and actually quite an attractive price to go to Tottenham and win this weekend. Despite all that, I have been banging the drum for quite a while, but this Man City team haven't been the same side that started the Premier League campaign. Since they were turned over by Liverpool at Anfield, they've not really convinced me for 90 minutes. I think they probably put in one of their better performances against Wolves in the Premier League last time out, and they'll obviously gain confidence by beating Arsenal in the FA Cup too. But despite those kind of negatives, they still have won 7 of the last 10 in the Premier League. They still are turning up and getting results. They might just not be, as attractive as the team we've probably seen in previous years, or as dominant. But a lot of this also rests on Spurs too. As Adrian says, they've lost all 5 against the top 4. They've lost 4 of the last 5 at home. Newcastle, Liverpool and Arsenal have all been to Tottenham and won this season. And Spurs are shipping goals at an alarming rate too. So that is a concern. I just think price-wise too, City just attractive at the price. It's as simple as that, really. I expect them to be below 1.7 considering the price they went off at Chelsea earlier this campaign. So yeah, Man City to win. I also agree with Miguel too that there's just too much attacking quality on the field this weekend for there not to be goals, really. City's defence hasn't covered themselves in glory consistently, and when you've got Richarlison fit, Kulusevski, Kane, Son, you expect Spurs to strike, and Danjuma now too. So they've got plenty of firepower. The issue is at the opposite end.
Yeah, we won't lock in an official bet as it is one of the guys' best bets. I won't give the game anyway, but a confident enough shouts there from the guys in general, Man City, but also leaning towards the both teams to score angle too. Move on to second game, which is a pretty crucial game. They all will be now from now to the end of the season for any of the bottom 6 or 7 playing each other. But Nottingham Forest are 2.74 at home to Leeds United, who are 2.8. Essentially a pick-em here. Draw is available at 3.55. Both teams to score, yes, is available at 1.75. The draw, no bet, is the Asian handicap line, essentially, and Nottingham Forest are ever so slight favourites at 1.93, and the goal line is currently available at 2.5. So, look, as regular listeners know, we asked the guys to pick a game each to cover, and Mark, this is your game of choice. So where are you leaning for here in terms of a bet?
Yeah, I want to be with Forest for a number of reasons, really. You said it there. It's pretty much a pick 'em here, and I don't believe that's a fair reflection of where Forest are right now. There are a couple of concerns, obviously. The emotional scars of the EFL Cup exit will be fresh in the mind, but I think the sort of outweighing positive of that is Forest probably knew they were already out of the semi-final going into that second leg, so it's not a huge hammer blow. Obviously, the rest and recovery from Wednesday to Sunday is something else to keep in mind, considering they're playing a very energetic Leeds team. But otherwise, I think they're in good shape. There are obviously injuries in the camp, and Morgan Gibbs-White, the obvious one there, but Henderson as well. But Forest, I think, made some astute signings on deadline day. Felipe is a very decent defender. John Joe Shelby, as we know, is a consistent bottom half Premier League performer. And Keylor Navas could easily be the best goalkeeper in the bottom half of the Premier League. So they do possess quality in that squad. And I think most importantly for me, Forest Steve Cooper, at least, have certainly found a style, a system, an approach that suited his team. It's going to take them time, obviously, and it did take them time. I thought a lot of the criticism they got earlier in the campaign was a bit over the top. I think full credit to Cooper for having or being able to sort of figure out a style and system that worked, and full credit to the board as well for believing in him and giving him the long-term deal, because they've been rewarded. Forest are now 4 points above the drop zone. They've only lost twice against teams outside the top 4 in the last 10 Premier League matches. That goes back to mid-October. They've won 4 of those. They're unbeaten in 4. They're also unbeaten at home since September. That's a 6-game streak, 3 of which were wins. And over the course of the whole campaign, they've only actually lost 4 games against teams outside the top 5. They boast 5 wins, 5 draws, 3 defeats against clubs in 8th and below. So a load of different stats from here now and sort of longer term, which kind of point to the fact that Forest are not easy meat these days. They might have been earlier in the campaign, but particularly at the City Ground, they're very, very competitive. And I think they definitely are trending in the right direction. I had faith in Cooper and Forest at the start of the season to find a way to consolidate in the Premier League, and I still believe they will stay up. So we're obviously playing a Leeds team who I think themselves have shown signs of life in some of their recent performances. But, it's just the same old issues. Sloppy errors at the back, poor finishing, just a defence that can't be trusted, and failure to win Premier League games consistently as well. They've struggled on the road. They've got the fewest away points in the league this season, won once, lost 6 of 9, conceded twice or more in 6 of those 9. And over the course of the whole season, they've won just 4 games, 2 in the last 16 Premier League matches too. So I think Weston McKennie's a nice pickup as well, but I don't think that's enough to sort of tilt the balance in Leeds' favour here and make them sort of deserving to be near a sort of a pick 'em here against Forest. So might well end in a draw. I think you need to have the draw on the side, and that's why I've got Forest plus 0 at 1.95, almost close to evens. The only way you lose this bet is if Leeds win. I think Forest gets something out of this game.
Yeah, even that stat of Leeds and the amount of games they've won this season is definitely a trending bet for sure. Miguel, the Keylor Navas, Mark brought it up there. Like, some transfers just make me smile, and this one, when I first saw it, is as random as it gets, in my opinion. I just didn't see this one coming, to be honest.
No, yeah, it was one of those that kind of that did genuinely surprise and transfer deadline. I mean, often with modern transfers, they're usually signposted for quite a while. Yeah, where kind of you get the initial report that allows to percolate, and then it kind of builds, and that actually happens. This one just came out of nowhere and was pretty much done. Maybe also one of those that kind of fits in with a trend of recently promoted or bottom half Premier League teams trying to kind of buy that experience or almost a bit of glamour from Champions League winners who are maybe towards the end of their career, which is pretty much what Navas is now. He has been a brilliant goalkeeper, not what he was. But of course, then he is covered for the moment and does give Forrest some stability in terms of his experience. Not sure it will change too much. I mean, with this one, I'm wondering what I've gone for over 2.5, and I'm wondering whether that's a bit conservative given these two teams. You could probably almost go to over 3.5 here. Yeah. More so actually, I would say, given Leeds United lately. Than Forest themselves, who Forest have been. There's actually been a bit more. I mean, they've gone up the table, but I think there's been a bit more inconsistency in terms of how high scoring their games have been, and they're not as soft a touch as they were earlier in the season. But with the way Leeds play, I think this can open up, and it's one of those that could genuinely be anything, but so long as it's got more than 2 goals.
Yeah, it's one of those games that kind of screams goals at you. I knew what you were going to say before you said it, Miguel, when you were kind of pausing and you were like, I've actually gone too conservative here. Adrian, you're happy to agree with Miguel on the over 2.5 goals?
Yeah, I got burnt before we had our little break. I got burnt on Leeds for my insights column. I felt convinced that the last game against Brentford would be a goal fest. It finished 0-0. So, yeah, I'm wary, but I still think goals. I'll level with you. I wanted to get on side with Mark's pick here. That was my initial gut feel. But the more I thought about it, the more there was a few question marks I have over Forest. And it's because of the signings. It's almost like they're starting again. And rewind it to the start of the season where there's so many new faces at once. They were a bit of a mess, and then they found their feet. It's almost, I think they might have signed too many players again this month, because now they're going to drop in another 4 or 5 newbies, which might have an impact on their performance levels. It might not, but looking at what happened early on in the season, it wouldn't surprise me. It feels like Leeds may be a bit more stable than them at the moment. And I do like the McKennie-Adams axis in midfield. I think that would be really, really strong. In terms of the angle on goals, it's really neither team are very good at keeping clean sheets. We know that. 15 and 19 Leeds games, they've conceded in. 14 of 20 for Forest, they've conceded in. And I think actually having a new goalkeeper between the sticks might mean it's less likely they keep a clean sheet just because of familiarity, relationships. I always think when you change the goalkeeper, it can lead to hesitation at times. I saw Leeds in the flesh actually at Accrington Stanley last weekend. Obviously, it's not a great gauge for a Premier League match, but they were sharp. I thought Bamford was excellent. I thought Jorginho Ruta, the new signing, looked excellent, really skillful, quick. I think he'll add a bit to Leeds United. And they just create so many chances. And I think they will create plenty at Forest. It'll be the same at the other end of the pitch. Scarpa, it looks decent. Wood will come back into the team, I'd imagine. They will miss Morgan Gibbs-White, but I think that Forest can still score goals against Leeds United. I think most teams can score goals against Leeds United. But I think Leeds are always capable of scoring at the other end. So, yeah, that's where I've landed on overs. I do see this as a pick-em. I'm not confident on Forest here, even though the stats tell you Leeds are terrible away from home and that Forest are surprisingly good at the City ground. Something's telling me those new faces might impact things. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with overs.
This is a tough one there to call, considering it's Mark's game of choice. I will lean with the Forest. The guys have kind of made some good points in over 2.5. But for an official bet on the Matchbook Insights, we'll lock in Nottingham Forest draw no bet. But all the guys' picks will be available on insights.matchbook.com. So I will include them all. So if you like following Mark,
should be going overs, Dan. I've been outvoted, so you should be going overs.
It's your game of choice, Mark, and I remember.
We're football writers, journalists. We got thick skins, Dan. We get plenty of sticks, so don't worry about offending us.
Mark, very briefly on Adrian made some good points against Forest. Now, there, to be fair, I do like the they're basically starting again here, sort of thing, and that didn't go well the first time. So are you less confident now after hearing Adrian and Miguel?
No, not really, because it's a price, it's a line thing. Right. I don't think, how many of those are going to be integrated into the first team this weekend? I think Cooper would be silly to put all of them in at the same point. I think Hennessy or Navas might get an opportunity, but I think Ryan Yates is due back, so I don't think there's any need to sort of put John Joe Shelby straight in there. I just like them. They've got plenty of ability, plenty of options, plenty of flexibility in that squad. And if any of the two teams are trustworthy, I think Forest would be more so for me, particularly at the City ground than Leeds. So it's fine. I'm not bothered.
No, I'm sticking with you, Mark. So I have a theme so far now with everyone here. So Forest Toronto bet is 1.95. We'll lock that in. Again, all the guys' picks will be available on insights.matchbook.com. Another big game here. This is Adrian's game of choice, so he is the odds-on favorite for his selection to be picked here. Of course, Newcastle at home to West Ham. Newcastle 1.67 or 1.68. Sorry, just changed there. West Ham available at 6.2. The draw is 3.95. Both teams to score. Yes, it's 2.16. So no, is a good bit favourite here at 1.82. West Ham getting a 3/4 of a goal head start in the Asian handicap line, and 2.5 is the total. So yeah, Adrian, I guess looking at your pick here, you wanted to get West Ham on side here, which is surprising, I guess. So maybe flesh out the case for us.
It was more, I wanted to. When I first picked the game, I thought of unders, and because Newcastle United haven't been, rich with goals, have they, in recent times, and we know that West Ham have had their issues in that department and are pretty defensive by nature. So unders is one to think of, but then I was drawn to West Ham, and I'll tell you why I was drawn to West Ham. Away from home, they've been really solid, even though they're having a shocking season. And on that, I think they have improved in recent weeks. I think we've seen, obviously with the win against Everton and the performance at Derby in the FA Cup, I think they're finding their feet. Jared Bowen, who's such a key man for West Ham, looks like his old self again. I think that's really, really important for West Ham that he's looking sharper. So no, I think there are signs of life about West Ham. Going back to West Ham's solidity away from home, if you get them on a +1 handicap, we only lose our stake once all season with West Ham. Once all season if they lost by more than one goal on the road. That was against Arsenal, the leaders. There's a few pushes in there, but they've also picked up points. You know, they've won the odd game, they've drawn the odd game. They stay in matches. And given that Newcastle aren't rich with goals at the moment, I think that they can stay in this match and compete. We've seen a few goalless draws with Newcastle of late. And I think West Ham will go there with quite a cautious mindset. There's also Guimaraes to think about. He's massive for them. He's their best player. He's their best player, in my opinion. Obviously, Pope's great, Trippier's great, Botman. These are all fantastic additions to the team. But Guimaraes, for me, is the man that makes them tick. And without him, I look at that central midfield and think, oh, Willock, there's Willock and Longstaff. What's going to happen? You know, who's going to come in there? And is it going to be a big downgrade on Guimaraes? The answer is yes. I also think the emotion of reaching a cup final could be a factor here in terms of, after the Lord Mayor show type of mentality. I think West Ham will make it a really difficult game for Newcastle United. That's my thought process here. I do think it will be low scoring. I wouldn't go against unders, but just in case, I'm happier to say that West Ham can get something here, possibly a draw. And if they lose by 1 goal, which is the worst I think they'll do, then we at least get our money back. So Newcastle +1 is my shout.
Yeah, Miguel, you do like that under sort of. Look, Newcastle have struggled to score goals in the Premier League the last few games, and West Ham, as Adrian touched on, are very solid. So under 1.5 goals is currently available at 3.3. That does seem big enough if you fancy 0-0 or 1-0 either way. Yeah,
especially given how Newcastle games have gone lately. Now, while they've been very solid in defence, I have felt for a while that Newcastle are beginning to maybe run out of steam is the wrong word, but I do think some of their early season results and scoring were down to one of those situations where a few players were on a purple patch at the same time, Almiron being the main one. That has subsided. And now, while the defensive structure's in place, because Howe has worked a lot on that, and they are very difficult to break down. The games are a little bit of a chore at the other end right now. I know they got 3 against Southampton the other night and conceded themselves, but that felt a little bit of a kind of an outlier of a game because it was a cup semi-final, a second leg, influenced by the first, and then with Everton involved by getting to that first final in over 20 years. So I wouldn't read too much, and I think more influential is the way the Premier League games have gone. With that, again, I think spiked by West Ham's necessity here. Also, it's a West Ham that will have a little bit more assertiveness about them, given that victory over Everton, which could have been one of the most pivotal moments of the season. Either way, maybe even given the way it led Everton to appoint Sean Dyche. And so, yeah, I'm going for a bit of a dogged game here. And under 1.5, I think a 1-0 either way is actually more likely, but it also covers the 0-0.
Yeah, and that 0-0 is around 11.5 currently on Matchbook, and look, we might even get a touch bigger come kick-off. Some games do scream 0-0, Mark, but make the case. And now your selection here is Newcastle and under 4.5 goals. So you do like the under in general terms. Why do you fancy Newcastle at the prices?
Well, I don't like using the word too much in football, but I think momentum is with Newcastle. There is something special brewing around the city right now. The fans know it, and they're moving forward at a much faster pace than certainly I expected them to do after the takeover, considering they haven't been, there has been investment, but not mad money going on superstar players coming for a fat paycheck. Eddie Howe's only been there for about 15 months or so. They're already in the running for a trophy and a top 4 finish. He's improved players beyond belief who are already there at the club, integrated the new signings, and they're ticking along superbly well. And I think the sort of qualification for the cup final has to be considered more of a positive than a negative. They're buoyed by that. I've got them in the top 4 in expected points, third when you look at the underlying metrics at home, just behind the top 2, as the league table suggests. And just that defensive record is absolutely extraordinary. They've kept 12 clean sheets in 20. They've kept 6 on the spin. They've kept 7 clean sheets in 10 at St James's. Exclude Man City, they've conceded 2 goals in 9 home games all season. So clearly, as the guys say, the slight concern is, do they have enough invention and craft to unlock deep line defences? Ordinarily, I would say yes. Clearly, Bruno Guimaraes' absence is a blow. But I think the bigger issue is do they have enough clinical edge to finish those chances in tight encounters? And that would be my slight concern. But just on West Ham, talked about their sort of underperformance before the Everton game. That was a significant win for Moyes. I didn't think they were that extraordinary to win the game. I think there was a bit of fortune about Bowen's goals as well. They did look lively in the final third, but beating an Everton team in the dying embers of Frank Lampard's era is not a kind of a statement of intent, I don't think. And their away record is much more kind of stand out to me, really. They're winless in 8 on the road. They've lost 6 of those. They've only scored 6 goals away from home all season. And if you include the last season as well, West Ham have played 13 away games at top half teams. They've lost 12 of those, and they've won none of them. So to me, that suggests there's something ingrained there in their approach, an issue that needs to be ironed out. I don't think going to St James's Park, a real buoyant St James's Park after midweek, is the place to go really for West Ham right now. And ultimately, I think if you exclude the bottom 4 teams below them, they've lost 12 of 16 Premier League games this season. So, I do believe it will be unders too. Only 5 of West Ham's matches have gone over. Interestingly enough too, 5 of their away defeats have actually been just 1-0. So you kind of get both Miguel's selection on side there and a push if Adrian went with the West Ham +1. And actually 9 of their 12 overall losses this season have been 1-0 or 2-0. So I've been conservative with the under 4.5 line. You could easily take an under 3.5 or even under 2.5 and get a much bigger price. But yeah, I'm pro Newcastle.
Yeah, it is funny at 1-0. Gets all 3 selections despite how different they are. Like Newcastle under 4.5, West Ham plus a goal for Adrian, and the Miguel under 1.5, 3.3. Adrian's game of choice. I think ultimately West Ham will make it difficult. So we're going to lock in the +1 at 1.77 as a bet. But again, all these selections will be up on Insights. We'll move on to Miguel's game of choice, and this is a fascinating game. Everton at home to Arsenal. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. And look, Everton are a big price, 9.2. Arsenal have yeah, that shocked me when I looked earlier this morning as well, Adrian. Arsenal 1.46. The draw is available at 4.7. Both teams to score no is favoured a good bit here at 1.81 in around 5 to 6 in all money terms. Asian handicap line sees Everton get 1.25 goal head start at 1.93, and the total is 2.5. Yeah, Miguel, I really want to focus on Sean Dyche. I saw a great video of his what seemed to be his first day of training in Everton. And he had them doing the bleed test. Which was the one revelation. The next one is Godfrey actually won it despite the fact he's hardly been playing at all. So I think that kind of shows a lot about A, the manager, and B, maybe some of the players.
Can I just say very, very quickly how to sort of annoy your players on day one? It's like a lot of managers would go in and think, I'll try and get the lads on side. You get the old bleep test out. Oh goodness. They must have been loving him. But look, they're in a mire. There's no time to waste, is there? I suppose he wanted to be brutal and assess their fitness levels before he got to work. But yeah, that's not what the players would have wanted. But yeah, over to you, Mick. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a fascinating game from that perspective. I mean, look, a week ago, I would have said it's not a fascinating game at all because Arsenal will probably destroy Everton. I do think Arsenal will win, but I think because it's that first game, because we know how Dyche works, and I think I should say, I like this. There was a lot of debate about this, especially in how it summed up how lacking in direction Everton are, that you can so easily go from Bielsa, who's such a distinctive style of manager and responsible for a whole school of playing, to Dyche, who is totally different in his own right. And most modern clubs just aren't run like that. They have a managerial profile and they go for that. You look Brighton now, say. But from that perspective, I actually think there was a logic from in the sense that Everton would have preferred to hire towards the long term, but they have such a short term necessity because really, they even beyond the usuals about going down and everything that means, it would mean even more for Everton, and not just because of the historical record of having never been relegated to the Premier League or haven't been in the top division for so many decades, but more so because of the financial pressure of the club, given there's a new stadium, given the amount of debt, given they don't have that many sellable assets in terms of players. So there's a real necessity for them to stay up this season. And it does feel like Dyche could be in that kind of, just because of the way he organises the defence, he could be in that kind of survival specialist mould, like Allardyce, who was also considered. And while I think a week is probably not enough to get this team sufficiently drilled against this Arsenal, I think it could be one of those games where they make it very difficult, where there's kind of encouragement for Everton, but Arsenal probably just have enough quality. They go, really, really hone it down in terms of kind of specific bets. 83rd minute winner for Arsenal or something like that. But I mean, to play a little bit safer, I'd say Arsenal and under 3.5.
Yeah, which is 2.2 currently. And Adrian, look, I'm for what it's worth, I'm on Miguel's line of thinking in terms of I think Arsenal, even despite how the stats will back up how fast starters they are, like Everton, it'll be rockets, particularly if the ownership don't turn up, so they can fully focus on backing Sean Dyche. I'm going on long-winded here to say you're backing Arsenal half-time and full-time, so you are confident going into this game, I guess, that they will take care of business early.
I'm still reeling from Miguel saying Big Sam was considered for the Everton job. I mean, is that true? I mean,
well, his name was brought up. Yeah.
I can't believe that. But anyway, yeah, look, I think that tells you all you need to know about what's going on at boardroom level there. Poor. Yeah, it's a good shout from Miguel. I think Arsenal and unders is a decent goal. I think I found another angle that works really well. Arsenal to be leading at half-time and to go on and win the game. Arsenal are the best first half team in the Premier League, have led in 11 of 19. Away from home, this is a great stat. Away from home this season, Arsenal's first half goal difference is scored 11, conceded 1. One first half goal against on the road this season. It's incredible. It really is. It was Anthony, of course, at Old Trafford that scored that goal. Yes. So they start games properly and they get on the front foot. They often get their nose in front, and that's been the bedrock really of Arsenal's season so far. Obviously, the new manager bounce. I mean, judging by the prices, Matchbook and the punters aren't buying into the new manager bounce too much here. Everton are huge, aren't they, at home? Was it 9.2? But they do have the second worst home record. 8 points from a possible 30 at Goodison this season. They've only won 3 of 20 matches overall. They are in a state, and you would imagine if Arsenal's attitude is okay, why wouldn't it be? Then they should sweep Everton aside. That's my view. I'm pretty confident on this one. I know it's an awkward game on paper. I know Arsenal have slipped up at Everton in recent seasons, but they're not in a good place at the moment, the Toffees, and this test might be too much for them. So I think Arsenal to lead at half time and then carry on and win the game.
Yeah. Mark, over to you. If I said I would be leaning towards Miguel, I'm probably leaning towards your bet here, Mark, which is no bet, just given the unknown factor with Sean Dyche.
Yeah, as Miguel said, it's a long time in football, just a week. If we were talking last Thursday, I think we'd all be all on board Arsenal to have a walkover win here. But the goalposts have changed with Lampard's sacking and Dyche's appointment. I think Dyche was the sensible option at this stage of the season. I think he is quite suited to the task, and I think he's got players at his disposal who he can mould to his type. I know he doesn't want to be sort of pigeonholed as this kind of long ball, ugly defensive football manager as he was at Burnley. But that's the hand he's been dealt, and he's going to have to deal something similar here with Everton. But I do think he's got players who can play to that style. You know, Cody and Tarkowski at centre half, Pickford, McNeil's there still, Calvert-Lewin, a revived Iwobi. They're lacking standout quality, but I do think there's a certain ability there to play and slot into a Dyche-style setup, similar to what we saw at Burnley. So I'm not saying this is a banana skin for Arsenal at all. They should easily win this game with flying colours, as they have done in 16 of their 19 Premier League games so far. But I do think Dyche and Everton are going to try and turn this into an absolute dog of a game. I think we're going to see spoiling tactics from the off, a real hunger, desire, motivation to get in Arsenal's faces and make life really difficult. And I do think we'll see a reaction from the Goodison Park crowd as well. And we saw at the back end of last season that can have a positive impact on the team. So if all those factors come together, it's not the biggest shock in the world if Everton got something out of this game. But I like to sort of leave a game when a new manager comes in. Guys have mentioned the new manager bounce, especially so when I think there is a huge jump up in ability between the predecessor and the current boss, as we have here with Lampard and Dyche. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think his body of work, not just at Burnley, but also at Watford, stands up a lot stronger than anything Lampard's achieved. So I do expect an improvement from Everton in the coming weeks.
Okay, yeah, fascinating how that goes. I will actually go and lock in Arsenal under 3.5 goals. I do think that's the most likely outcome, and 2.2 is pretty appealing at odds against. But as Mark says, proceed with caution there with Sean Dyche. I was actually at Everton versus Arsenal's game Monday Night Football last season, so I know how well that Goodison Park crowd can just get going. And at the time, they wanted Rafa Benitez gone, so that would be goodwill towards Sean Dyche. That's the bet for the Everton Arsenal game. West Ham plus a goal. Adrian shout at 1.77. Forest straw no bet was Mark's shout, and we're going to get to the best bet for the City game. But insights.matchbook.com, as I mentioned, for a full recap, or if you just want to just basically a refresh of what was picked on the podcast, there's going to be plenty thrown at you from now on. And we're going to go to our EFL expert, Adrian Clarke, who's got 2 selections. The first one is both teams to score no, Hull versus Cardiff. And I will just point, Adrian, you must have missed that Aaron Connolly now plays for Hull. So, I mean, Hull are definitely going to score for sure.
Got a brace, didn't he, the other day? I think on his birthday. Yeah. So, well done to Aaron Connolly. Yeah. He had a good game. QPR, I mean, Mark will know this. QPR not in great shape at the minute. But yeah, Hull aren't that exciting though. So I have seen them in the flesh this season, and they're a really well coached team under Liam Rosenior, but they're a little bit sterile in the way they go about things. It's sort of, you know, a little bit mechanical, not that not much freedom, so to speak. They don't create stacks of chances, Hull City. And they're up against a Cardiff team that are quite dull. I have to be honest, they've failed to score in 48% of their games this season, Cardiff City. For Hull, it's 38% of their games they've drawn blanks in, which still equates to 11 matches in the Championship. So these two sides are quite accustomed to failing to find the back of the net. If you look across the last 8 games, 7 of the last 8 for Cardiff have gone under 2.5. 6 of the last 8 Hull matches have gone under 2.5. I think the odds on under 2.5 are quite skinny on this one, which is why I've gone BTTS no. Cardiff got that new manager, Sabi Lamouchi, former Forest guy. Good manager, but by nature, it's defence first. It's caution. It's pragmatic, play on the counter. And I think that's how it's going to be for Cardiff between now and the end of the season. And yeah, even with Aaron Connolly up top, I don't think Hull are one of the most threatening sides in the Championship inside the final third. So yeah, I think this is going to be low scoring. I can absolutely see one or both of these two teams failing to find the back of the net.
Yeah, but Irish striker qualities now, the likes of Evan Ferguson on the scene. Hopefully he's back.
Now he is good. He is very good.
Yeah, he is actually good. Yeah, he's proper. But yeah, that injury now was very disappointing. Bone bruise, which I think takes about a month, 6 weeks. So we'll see if he'll be back in time for France. Second game, Sheffield Wednesday at home to Plymouth. Second versus first in League One, and you're expecting goals here, Adrian.
It's a belter. It is an absolute cracker at the top of League One. 2 really, really good teams here, Sheffield Wednesday and Plymouth. Both really attacking. They've got quality in forward areas. Plymouth have scored in 25 of 28 matches this season, and they've scored a lot of goals as well. Sheffield Wednesday have scored in 23 of 27 matches this season. When they met at Home Park earlier in the season, it was a great game. Plymouth won it 2-1 in the end, but there was plenty of chances. Both goalkeepers were exceptional on the day, particularly Plymouth's Michael Cooper. So I think these two sides will go at it. I don't think this is going to be a cautious game at Hillsborough. I've been to Hillsborough a few times this season. They make the pitch massive. Sheffield Wednesday, they get the wing backs wide. They want to play an expansive game when they have the ball, which is great. But it also leaves them a little bit vulnerable down the middle of the pitch when they lose the ball. And Plymouth have got some really good playmakers in there. Finn Azaz stands out. They've got good striking options. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good game. Plymouth unbeaten against top half teams, scored in 13 of 14 against top half teams this season, Plymouth. So I would back them to score at Hillsborough. And Sheffield Wednesday almost always score at home as well. So both teams to score for me, and you can get it at even money. So happy days.
Yeah, it definitely looks like has all the makings of a really good game there. Mark, over to you on the Bundesliga. And for those that maybe haven't tuned in after the winter break, you think the winter break maybe came at a bad time for Union Berlin, but 3 wins in a row. They're second in the Bundesliga and only 1 point off Bayern Munich. And you fancy them to get their 4th win in a row since the winter break in the league.
Yeah, they're around even money, if not slightly bigger on the exchange. The fact that they are 1 point behind Bayern Munich after 18 Bundesliga games is absolutely extraordinary. You couldn't find a bigger sort of David versus Goliath head-to-head between the two clubs. It's completely ludicrous to think that they're anywhere close and competing in the same stratosphere as Bayern. Now, obviously, Bayern haven't been the relentless beast that we've come to expect, but Union have performed just wonderfully consistently across the whole campaign, having the season like no other into the semi-finals of the DFB Pokal after their midweek win as well. Of course, the underlying data suggests that they are overperforming, but I think that's more to do with their style and approach, more so than anything else. Obviously, XG tends to sort of lend itself well to the likes of Bayern and Man City, who dominate the ball and create countless chances, whereas Union, a bit more reserved, set piece efficiency, a resolute rear guard, just a side that works their socks off and makes life really difficult for their opponents. They are one of the most awkward teams to play in the Bundesliga, and they're riding a wave. A derby win against Hertha Berlin last weekend, as you say, made it 3 wins on the spin since the World Cup break. They've scored twice or more in all of those matches, including their cup win midweek too. And just like the price, hosting a Mainz team on Saturday, Union at home, they've posted 6 wins from 8, unbeaten, including beating fellow top half teams Dortmund, Gladbach, Leipzig, Wolfsburg. They held Bayern. Just a formidable team at home, and they've scored twice or more in 7 of those 8 home games in the Bundesliga as well. They're playing a Mainz team who bettered Bochum 5-2 last week, but Bochum are atrocious travellers, so there's not much to be read into that. They felt the wrath of Bayern in midweek, played Wednesday night, got thrashed 4-0 in the Pokal quarter-final. Obviously, a Wednesday to Saturday turnaround isn't ideal, but last weekend was only their 4th win since August in the Bundesliga as well. So, yeah, just keen to be with Union here, evens or better. Their home record since the start of last season, 16 wins, 7 draws, 2 defeats. That's a 64% win rate over the last 18 months or so now. And their only defeats came against Bayern Munich and Dortmund, both of which came last season and both of which finished in the top 2 last term. So evens or better on Union at home just stands out to me.
Yeah, we'll move on to that does stand out to me as well, definitely over evens. We'll move on to Napoli and Serie A, Miguel, and just another props to Mark O'Hare for giving them the shout out on the Champions League podcast and outright 3 figures. I looked at their odds there while Mark was talking, 13.0 for the Champions League. Back to Serie A, they essentially have it wrapped up, and you're just going to keep backing goals, I guess, in Serie A and Napoli games.
Well, I mean, put simply, this is a game between the top scorers in Serie A by some distance and the 3rd worst defence in Serie A, or sorry, 4th worst, but it seems to concede 32 in Spezia. So, I mean, we can see it just feels one of those. It's almost kind of a no-brainer in the sense you can see the direction of travel. So I'm going over 3.5 is quite a decent price at 2.74. But equally, then there's the other element of it, which is just the fascination of every Napoli game right now. As Marcus Long, he's been on this since the start of the season, and we've all come in. But I mean, the Napoli-Roma game the other night as well. It was the last 5 minutes of that, I think, were the best spell of club football I've seen this season. It was incredible, and it did kind of emphasize something, which is it almost feels like until they actually get this title, Napoli almost play every single match as if they're not at 100%, it's all going to come crashing down, as if it's like almost like a shark. If they stop moving, that's it. And I do think it's why, again, something like this is appealing, because I think they'll go into this game against, you would think, fairly forgiving opponents with exactly the same approach. And it's there to be taken up. Yeah,
definitely seems a worthwhile play. Backing goals in Napoli game, 7-4, around 2.74 currently on the match with betting exchange. And we'll move on to our long shots section, guys. We won't spend too long here. Maybe cases be brief as possible. Back to you, Miguel. So you're liking a correct score here. Brentford home to Southampton, which is Brentford 3, Southampton 1. I guess Southampton's defense, Brentford's attack is probably a good place to start on this.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there was a few this week I was considering. But it was one of those games, sometimes when you see a fixture and a scoreline immediately comes to your head, that gut instinct. That's exactly what I felt when I saw Brentford Southampton. So I'm going Brentford 3-1.
Yeah, no, I've watched plenty of Southampton games this season, and poor Bazunu is struggling with the defence in front of him, even under Nathan Jones. Mark, over to you. Come on.
No, Jones is a nice idea of football, but it seems a little bit naive for what he's doing at the moment, and it's making Southampton easy to get at.
Yeah. Mark, over to you for this one. This is interesting now. So you're going to take on Liverpool. Look, we've been burnt a lot this season being pro-Liverpool at certain prices, but you're going to take them on here in the long shot section.
Yeah, they're odds on to win at Molineux against Wolves, and I'd be surprised if many people were keen to take Liverpool at those kind of prices. They've already lost 5 times in 9 away Premier League games this season. They failed to score in back-to-back league games, We've documented their problems throughout the campaign. Defence, which is hemorrhaging goals and hemorrhaging chances. Midfield, which is unbalanced and struggling to sort of find the right trio, and a forward line which has been creating chances but not been able to finish those opportunities. Whereas actually in the last 6 games or so, Liverpool's chance creation numbers have dropped off quite significantly too. So the defence is still struggling, and now going forward, they're struggling too, which is quite a big concern. Obviously played Wolves twice in the FA Cup not so long ago. Both teams were much changed. We can't read too much into that, but I do think we can start to treat Wolves differently. Obviously, I put them up as a long shot against Man City, and they were well beaten before the FA Cup break. But I still believe in Lopetegui. I still believe in Wolves. I still believe they'll stay up. He's taken as many points in his 5 games as they'd managed in their previous 10 before he arrived. I like their signings in January as well. I think there's been some smart additions. And if you look at the squad, there's decent ability there, and there's a nice different variety of skill sets and flexibility for him to sort of utilise too. So I think they can be competitive. Would not be surprised to see them topple Liverpool. But just chucking under 3.5 goals in as well, just to bump the price up past your minimum odds threshold, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's there for a reason, Mark. So if you sneak by it all, by all means, but under 3.5 seems pretty safe. Their Wolves look solid recently enough. Adrian, this was a game I was struggling to call myself, so I wasn't surprised to see you put up 1-1 between Aston Villa and Leicester City.
Yeah, exactly. I do fancy both teams to score. Leicester have scored in 9 of 10 away games. The only one they blanked in was at Forest, where they were in rotten shape at the time. I do feel that there was a bit of a change of mood. Maddison's back. They've signed a few players. I think off the pitch, 1 or 2 big decisions have been made at Leicester City. I don't think they're as down in the dumps as they were a couple of weeks ago, Leicester. So they'll go there, I think, and be quite competitive. Villa have scored in 8 of 10 home games, so they're normally worth at least 1 goal. They're not going to be super expansive under Unai Emery. They're going to stay in games, whether it's home or away. So yeah, I can see that, and it's it's a West v East Midlands derby, isn't it? So I don't think it's going to be end-to-end gung-ho stuff, but I can see both teams scoring, which lands me at 1 apiece, and I think the price is decent.
Yeah, and even those correct scores with liquidity coming into the match with betting exchange, they will tighten up and perhaps be a small bit bigger on the day as well. So we're going to move on to best bets, and reminder to check out the description if you do want to set up a matchbook account and get double the odds on some of these bets. And one of them, which looks very appealing to me, Mark, is the Milan derby on Sunday evening. And we'd be having a great Serie A title race if it wasn't for runaway trains Napoli, and these are 2 of the teams in the Milan derby. Inter at home to Milan.
Yeah, so these two faced each other in the Supercoppa just 2 weeks ago, and Inter wiped the floor with Milan 3-0. I would not be surprised to see something similar occur on Sunday night because Milan have just lost their way since the break, the World Cup break. They started off with a sketchy 2-1 win against Salernitana. Then they dominated Roma, led 2-0 and conceded 2 last gasp goals to drop points, and that seems to be the catalyst for a really miserable following, really. They were eliminated by Torino in the Coppa Italia at home. Then they fell 2-0 down against Lecce and had to battle back to pinch a point. Then came that Inter defeat. And in the last 2 matches, they've been trounced 4-0 at Lazio and then just embarrassed 5-2 at home to Sassuolo last weekend. So 16 goals conceded in 6 games, 12 in the last 3. They were obviously punched well above their weight to win the Scudetto last season. They've really struggled to keep pace with anyone this time around. And Stefano Pioli, the head coach, has basically came out last week to say he doesn't really know what's gone wrong. He's just struggling to sort of deal with issues. There's been injuries. There's been talk of Rafael Leao falling up the hierarchy as well. Contract ramblings kind of continuing. Tomori, his absence was a massive blow in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, they beat Inter in the reverse game 3-2, but it feels like a lifetime ago. This team is really struggling, and Pioli had to deal with the directors after the Sassuolo defeat. He's got the support right now, but another heavy defeat the weekend could easily tip the balance there. And look, Inter aren't exactly humming at the minute. They haven't been flawless at all, but they're in a much better position of promise, I think, than Milan coming into this game. Lautaro's found his form again since the World Cup, and they are the only team to turn over Napoli as well, which came at San Siro. So they are capable of rising to the occasion. They beat Atalanta midweek in the Coppa Italia as well, which was a good victory. So happy to chance them at evens or better. They're 2.06 on the exchange, and I think it's a nice price against a Milan team who are really sort of just I don't even know how to describe them in it. They've just been absolutely wretched since the break.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty decent case there, particularly on the anti-AC Milan brigade. Adrian, Manchester City versus Tottenham. I try to keep this a secret from the top, covering it first, and you've kept it a secret, but you do like this as your best bet of the weekend.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, just touching on the reasons why. Obviously, Spurs have lost all 5 games against the current top 4. They've been conceding a lot of goals at home. I think at least 2 in their last few at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They do have a great home record against Manchester City under Pep, but you can't see that lasting, can you? Indefinitely. Sooner or later, they're going to come a cropper, and City have got so much motivation to go there and get a win. There's no Antonio Conte. Obviously, we wish him well. His recovery from the operation on his gallbladder. So yeah. That might impact Spurs. I just don't trust their defence or central midfield against Manchester City, and that's where their strengths lie. De Bruyne, Rodri, and co. I think can dominate the engine room, and I'll have to back Haaland, Alvarez, Mahrez, and co. to really get a Spurs defence that just hasn't been convincing all season. I think there's a bit of a gulf here, and I would expect Manchester City to sweep Spurs to one side. And look, as a slight jinx bet, if that doesn't happen, I wouldn't be devastated if Spurs were to take something off of City too. But that's not why I picked it.
Yeah, who knew going against Spurs would be a jinx bet, Adrian? But there you are. Miguel, make the case for under 1.5 goals at 3.3 Newcastle, West Ham. I was surprised not to see 0-0 in your correct score, 1-0 either way. So this is probably
that's exactly it. Yeah, it's in my best bet. So I mean, I was considering putting Napoli Spezia in here as well, but I think just with the way Newcastle games have gone, as I said about West Ham as well, being that bit more sure of themselves, I think this could be not necessarily good to watch, but that could be beneficial in some way.
No, for someone that's sat through 3 or 4. Yeah. Someone who sat through the last 3 or 4 Newcastle games outside the cup ones, I can see the case entirely. And look, you'll be getting 6.6 with that offer, so do check that out. Insights.matchbook.com. Full recap of all the guys' bets. Do hit that like button if you're enjoying the content, and let us know in the comments what you thought of the guys or any feedback for the show. We will be back next Thursday for one more Premier League before the Champions League keeps kicking on then. Bye-bye.